In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how to get your QuickBooks file ready for your first import using the LedgerSync sync functionality. So I'm in my sample QuickBooks file here, and one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the List tab, and I'm going to open up my chart of accounts and take a look at the bank accounts and the credit card accounts that I want to import to. And one of the first things you'll notice is there's a couple of accounts here that have this little lightning bolt next to it. And what that means is that at some point, maybe not recently, but at some point this account had been set up for the online banking functions and is thinking that you're going to use those old ways of doing it. Perhaps you were downloading from the bank, perhaps you're using Direct Connect or something like that. So the first thing I have to do is get rid of these. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to right click and I'm going to click Edit Account. And I'm going to come over to the second tab called Bank Feed Settings. You can see that it's activated and it's got the financial institution, the account ID, all of this. I'm going to click on this Deactivate All Online Services because whenever I start using the file from LedgerSync, I want to be able to choose this and kind of set it up to where it knows that you're going to be syncing it with LedgerSync from now on. Watch what happens when I click this. Gives me a warning. It says you can't disable this because there are downloaded transactions that need to be added to the register. Now, if there weren't downloaded transactions, it would let me do this. I just hit save and close and it gets rid of that lightning bolt and you're ready to go. But in this case, I need to go do something else. And I'm going to show you what I need to do. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to come over to the Banking tab, and I'm going to go into Bank Feeds and go to the Bank Feeds Center. And here, this is the account that I was trying to deactivate. I can see it's got 28 transactions in here waiting, and it's not going to let me deactivate until I do something with these. Now, if these were actual transactions you needed to go ahead and get in the account, then you can come into the transactions list here and just do that. You can put in these transactions where they need to go, reconcile, and you're done. But in this case, let's assume that these are really old transactions that you have no idea where they came from necessarily. You know that the balance is currently correct in the account, so you just want to get rid of them. So I'm going to come over here to this checkbox. I'm going to check all of them. I'm going to come to Batch Actions, and I'm going to click Ignore. Sure you want to get rid of all these? I'm going to say yes. Now I can close this. I see now that there's no transactions in here. I can close this. And now I can click Deactivate, save and close. It says I've just disabled the online banking features. And this is what we want. We don't want that lightning bolt. It used to be right here. It's now ready for me to start importing from LedgerSync. So you want to do that to any accounts that might have these lightning bolts next to them. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the account. Let's go into this checking account here. And I'm going to make sure I know when the last transactions were. Typically, probably, they are the end of the month, whatever the last month of work that was done in them. And I'm going to take a little note of this right before I do my LedgerSync work, because I don't want to bring in a file from LedgerSync that overlaps the last date here. So if the last date in this account was June 30th and I've reconciled it, then I want to start my LedgerSync exports from July 1. And just watch that a little bit, because if you start to overlap these and this is a reconciled account, QuickBooks is going to think those old transactions. Let's say you tried to do an import from June 1st. All these transactions here are going to get doubled up because QuickBooks does not know that it should have matched them because you've reconciled the account already. Now, technically, if you hadn't reconciled the account, there's maybe a pretty good chance that QuickBooks would recognize it, but in most cases, you've probably reconciled from the last time you were doing the work. So just make sure you make a note whenever you start your LedgerSync exports that you want to start from this date here, and you want to start from July 1 to where you don't get any kind of overlapping. Finally, the last thing that I'm going to take a look at before I really start importing is making sure that I've taken a look at what rules have been created inside this file. Rules are what helps us once we start sending LedgerSync imports into QuickBooks to code our transactions for us, but I want to know what rules have already been made because they may not be the rules that I really want in there. So again, I'm going to come to Bank Feeds, and I'm going to open up the Bank Feeds Center here. And right up in the top left, see this little button right here called Rules. I'm going to click in here. And I can see that there are two rules. Now there's one that's default, which is called Never Automatically Create Rules, which is the rule that tells QuickBooks, ask me about all rules. So that's always going to be there. But I also see this one that says, if description contains Shell Oil, then rename the payee Shell and categorize the account to insurance expense gas. If I don't want this rule in here, I can come in here and edit or delete that rule. If I want to leave it, you can just leave it in there, but sometimes you can come into these rules lists and see tens, if not 100 different rules here, and if you start doing imports, it's going to start using those rules regardless of whether they were made 10 years ago or yesterday. So just come in here and make sure you know what the rules are. If you don't like any rules, just delete them. I can delete this guy right here. Sure you want to delete this guy? It says yep, and I can kind of start off with a blank slate to where when I do my first import, it's going to ask me what kind of rules I want to make, and as I go along I can make them, and every time I log back into QuickBooks, those rules will take over and help me do my coding. Those are the three main things you want to take a look at before you start QuickBooks imports. If you have any questions, reach out to our support team. Thanks for taking a look.